Guys, today we've got Richard Adamson from Young Henrys. Richard has been in the industry for quite a while now. I think Young Henrys is around about 10 years, has been going for around about 10 years, which is awesome. So, Richard, really great to have you.
Thanks for having us, Tim.
Pleasure. So, initially, I'd love to understand kind of where you came from and how you got into the industry. We've had a lot of, we speak to a lot of different brewers, and kind of it's been interesting. We've had one half of them that have come from the kind of almost like a chemical engineering and science path, and then we've had the other half that have come from more of a business path. So what was your path into the vertical?
Well, out of uni, I was playing in a rock band when I started studying, and I didn't really think that I needed to focus on any sort of career because I was, music was going to be what I was doing. So I studied politics and psychology, which probably only qualified me to be an argumentative bastard.
I would have thought so.
Yeah, and then got into IT because I could do it, and there was a demand for it at the time, and ended up doing that for about 9 years or so, and went through the whole .com boom and bust, and was a .com optioneer there for a while. And at the end of that, I kind of wanted to do something real and tangible, and something that didn't have any compatibility issues. And as it turns out, beer fits in all size classes. And I was a home brewer from way back, and Scott Morgan, who's my brother-in-law, who's been in the industry for a long time as well, convinced me to sign up to Ballarat University and do the postgraduate course there, and then started Barron's Brewing with a few other people in 2005, and did that for several years. And then after a while, I wasn't really happy with the direction I was going in and wanted to do something different. So left that, and then started working on Young Henrys. And I think I left in 2010, and then the first beer for Young Henrys came out in 2012.
Cool. What was that like from I guess from leaving a different business to going in and starting your own? Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of setup and all the rest of it that is involved in that. Can you remember some of the challenges that you had when you were actually getting started and building? Obviously, it was a different time and probably different challenges. It's obviously the market's, there's a lot of players in the market these days. So someone starting a new brew, very different to 10 years ago.
Look, I think that most of the challenges are the same.
Okay.
I think one that the regulatory side is probably a little better understood. Depending on where you are, though, your council may kind of know what a brewery is and looks like and what that entails, or they may not. If you're new to an area, and look, if you're starting a brewery where there's a whole bunch of established breweries, there's some pros and cons. Obviously, you can build a community around you, and maybe the council knows what you're doing, but you're not unique. So yeah, we were new in the Inner West. The Inner West Council didn't really know how to deal with us, so the regulatory challenges were really difficult. Getting advice I get on equipment was all okay, but sort of all the services and stuff around it was probably a little harder, and dealing with city water and all those types of things. But I think those sort of challenges are fairly common still, but the regulatory issues are probably still the hardest to get over. Yeah,
okay. And the brewery, when you started it, did you go down the regular path of kind of doing a kind of a tap room, or did you go wholesale from day one, or how did that work?
It was kind of forced upon us. So we initially wanted to do quite a high-end sort of, well, not a high-end restaurant, but like do barbecued meats and have a restaurant and bar first and foremost, and the brewery servicing that. And then we just couldn't get approval in Sydney to do that kind of arrangement. So we tried to do it in Surrey Hills. That didn't work. We took a warehouse in the edge of Newtown there, thinking we could probably do the same, but any attempt we did had to get a restaurant there was knocked back from council, so we had to go down the wholesale path. And I look back on that, and it was probably a good thing in hindsight that we had to go down that path. It changed the business quite significantly. Not to say you can't have a restaurant and do the wholesale stuff as well, but it really forced us to get into that side of the business early.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it tends to be quite a hard part of the business, especially if you're already up and going and running a hospitality venue. As you know, how much time and effort it takes to run a hospitality venue, no matter how many people you've got involved, and then kind of doing wholesale on top of that would be a challenge. So doing it the other way around is actually an interesting way to look at it. So from there, you obviously you've started wholesale, and then what was the evolution of the brewery from there?
I was looking at what the hell we're doing, I think was the main evolution. So, I think we hadn't really thought much beyond making the beer to start with. So we didn't really have much of an idea of selling it. I remember, we were doing it. We were doing everything. So we were going out and selling it once we'd finished the day in the brewery. And that involved probably having beers at the bars and pubs that we wanted to get it into, and talking our way in. But very quickly in the first year, we kind of maxed out what we could do. We doubled the capacity of the brewery. In 2013, Dan Hampton came on board, who's sales director now, and Dan's first job was really to say no to any new customers, and he ran the tasting bar on the weekends for us, because it wasn't really out there selling that much until we could grow the capacity again.
How hard was that? Sorry, how hard was that for a sales manager to actually have to say no to customers?
It was very hard. It wasn't his nature, that's for sure. But I think he obviously didn't. He said not yet, but we'll get to you soon. I just think we're a very fortunate position then that there wasn't much competition. So when people were ringing and asking for the beer, they were willing to wait, and they're very forgiving on us as well in terms of us working our way through our logistic issues and supply, sort of the cycle in terms of making sure we had enough stock and all those sort of things. So, early days, it was quite often me filling the keg on a Friday afternoon and Oscar loading it into the ute and dropping it off at the customers. And quite often there was people at the bar waiting for the beer to be tapped. So it was pretty thin on the ground and just in time at those stages.
So it's that true kind of grinding startup story where you're kind of working it out as you go along.
Absolutely. I don't think we had even had a forklift at that stage. We were borrowing the neighbour's forklift until got to a time it was just too embarrassing to ask, because we were using it more than they were.
Yep.
So we went, okay, we better buy one of those. So all those little things, like having someone doing deliveries, they all sort of grew as we grew as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's interesting. As I said, we've spoken to a bunch of different breweries, and kind of most of them have started more recently. So it's been probably more of a structured approach to kind of getting the capital and then deploying the capital based on a plan and all that type of thing. And I think some of the best stories that I hear kind of day to day are the ones where you have to work it out as you go. And I guess you kicking that brewery off, say 10 years ago or so. It's just what has to happen. You just have to, there's probably not too many people paving the way. You guys would have been one of the first to really scale a independent craft brewery, right?
Yeah, I think it was our peers. So ahead of us were Stone and Wood, and we certainly took a lot of inspiration from them, and and a little bit of advice here and there along the way as well. But I think there wasn't much happening in Sydney at that time, that's for sure. So once there was some other breweries around too, we could kind of all help each other and borrow equipment and ingredient stuff if we were short. But yeah, when you're the first one and there's not much else around you, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, one of the things I've found from we've been dealing with breweries for say 12, 18 months. And one of the big things I've noticed is the community there. The community is a very, very close community, and everyone talks a lot. So the idea of you kind of sharing equipment and all that type of thing, it's clear that was born from the community that is there now is born from necessity, and it seems like everyone tends to know everyone else, and there is a lot of everyone chats and talks throughout the journey. I think that's really good.
It is one of the most collaborative industries. I think people from the outside of brewing see for the first time and go, "Oh, really? That's really nice. That's kind of crazy." Like you're kind of helping your competitors out there.
Big time. Yeah.
The only downside, I guess, is everyone knows each other's business, though. Yep. So there's no secrets in the game.
Yeah, I kind of I noticed that early on as well. There's a lot of talk, but look, to be honest, 99% of it is really positive talk, and everyone talks glowingly about everyone else, which is kind of rare when people are talking about their competitors.
It's true, and that's something we've definitely kept as part of our ethos as we've grown as a business and taken on more people. Is just don't talk about the competition unless you've got something nice to say. Otherwise, just stick to talking about us.
Yeah, I think people find out pretty quickly if you've got negative things to say. So it's always good to remain on the positive side.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the first type of beer that kind of took off for you guys?
Well, we had, when we first started, and it was Natural Lager and Real Ale were the two beers that we were selling the most of. But within that first year, it was Newtown's 150th anniversary, the sesquicentenary, and City of Sydney just suggested that if it might be a nice idea if we made a beer for the occasion. So we made the Newtowner and launched it at the local pub, which was the Courthouse was the pub that we always kind of wanted to be in. That's the locals pub for Newtown, and massive sort of beer garden and a real beer drinkers pub as well. So to get in there was great. And I think on the opening, we launched it on the Thursday night, and by Sunday we'd sold something like 17 kegs in that pub. And they wanted to keep it on, and I think that scared me a lot, because at that point it would have been like half of our production would have been for that one beer at that one pub.
Wow.
Going on those numbers. So that was the beer that really took off for us. We didn't have a pale ale in the sort of portfolio before that either, so it kind of slotted in nicely, with what we were doing. And that's the sort of flagship beer we've had ever since.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess building off of that, the core pubs that were supporting you and that you had lines in and all that type of thing, obviously, and you obviously know this from the IBA perspective as well. When you're going and you're a small brewery and you're going and you're trying to put lines in and that type of thing, and you have to compete against the big guys. How do you operate in a way where you can afford to, number one, deliver the beer at a price that is competitive or competitive as far as the retailer is concerned, i.e. they can sell it at a high price, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And what are the challenges that, if you're a new brewery and you're giving advice to a new brewer who's entering the market, what can they do to make sure that they can remain competitive as well?
It is really about finding your audience, I think, and speaking to what people want to see. So that was obvious in that case that it was driven by customer demands, that they wanted it. Pricing is tricky. So you've really got to do your numbers and know where you sit. I think depending on your business model, looking at the ABV is really kind of critical as well. And if you can shave off a few dollars with the ABV, sometimes it's worth doing. And targeting something that's sort of got the repeat drinking sessionability is important too. If you're looking for draft sales, particularly if you're not going down that specialist route. But we've always sold on kind of relationships, really, and that's that's what it's about. If we can bring something to your business as a publican more than just the tap point, that's what we're aiming to do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there has to be that differentiator. It's obviously too difficult to compete on a pure price and kind of infrastructure standpoint against the majors. And that kind of brings me to the next point, and especially with your recent appointment as chairman of the IBA, I'd love to understand. The IBA has done a lot of good work recently to lobby the government to be able to get to be able to get some of the excise tax, the threshold increased and all the rest of it. So can you run me through kind of exactly how you see that and what you guys are lobbying for in the future, especially around taxation of the beverage industry, but also anything else that you guys are focused on lobbying on for the broader community?
Yeah, look, there's a bunch of things. So I think that it's important to recognise that lifting of the threshold to have parity with wine was a culmination of many years' work, and I think it started off, probably 25 years ago, with a small bunch of brewers at the time. Would have been, the Lord Nelson and Jeff Shara, saying that we should have the same breaks as wine, and it's really as the industry's grown and we've been able to get a voice that is representative of a reasonable kind of economic impact in terms of dollars spent and jobs, that we managed to do the convincing just recently. There has been some talk. I don't know if you've seen the BA and the AHA were aiming to get a 50% rebate on draft beer. We were broadly supportive, but not actively advocating for that. And given that most of our members in the IBA are in the smaller sort of size,
yep.
I think most of them are tier one in terms of our tiers in terms of sales. So they're not making a whole bunch of beer. It's unlikely to impact them in terms of giving them any sort of benefit. And it would just mean, I think, that the gap between what a small brewery could sell their keg at and what the big guys could sell their keg at would probably widen. So it wouldn't really be to our members' benefit, as far as I can see. So on the future lobbying, there's kind of two things. There's furthering the business, in our industry, and I guess there's protecting as well. So we're getting a lot of pressure from anti-alcohol lobbying groups to, further regulatory pressures on what we're trying to do. We've just had the pregnancy warning coming in for labelling. Nutrition's coming up, so that there's a movement to put nutrition panels. But look, the anti-lobbying people won't really stop until we've got something like a floor price for alcohol or towards plain packaging. So we've really got to fight for a right to exist on that front as well.
Can I quickly talk to you about that and dig a bit further into that? I'd be really interested to understand what the core motivation is for groups like that. Obviously, there's there could be a number of motivations, but I find that if we're talking about nutrition and labeling and that type of thing, that's one thing. But if we're talking about plain packaging for alcohol, I think that is. I personally think that's crazy talk. But what's your feeling across that area?
My feeling that groups like FAIR and others are the new temperance societies. So they won't, they're just pure anti-alcohol. So they don't see any benefits to alcohol within society. They just see societal harm. So that's kind of what we're up against. We're not up against a group that is going to be, reasonable,
yeah,
arguing at all. So that's the fight we've got in front of us.
And there and those type of groups, they're obviously, it seems like they're quite well funded and well organized, and they're very used to doing things like this. Is that pretty accurate?
Well, we have funded FAIR. So FAIR got its money through the excise that we pay, and they've got a large base that they invested that keeps on paying them all the time. So they've got very deep pockets.
Okay.
And yeah, they are very well funded. And the things that sort of annoy me about that group is it's obvious to me that they've been going and crawling through particular breweries' social media posts and putting historical complaints into ABAC about advertising. And also in terms of their research too, they never really publish the raw data or the methodology. And they just sort of publish a headline.
They publish, their findings that are relevant to their talking points, right?
That's it, and we don't actually get to interrogate the data at all. So I find that very frustrating, and that journos probably get the press release, and it's easy to put a story together without having to ask for the data and really interrogate it themselves. And
look, it's supremely dishonest when groups do things like that, and we see that. I see that across in every walk of life. You got journalists that only want to do half the job now. They want to be able to produce articles quickly and produce articles that might be a little bit controversial and might be a little bit clickbaity. And that's really what they're after, the journalists. And, these kind of groups obviously know how to work with journalists because that's their whole thing is naming and shaming type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a real problem. It's a real problem across culture in general, I think. And, we see it in not in every industry, but in every walk of life. So it's a real concern what kind of damage they can do. And when people look historically back at the things that you said prior to rules being changed and prior to you making updates and prior to you changing the way that you operate, it's a real concern.
Also, as you get bigger too, you grow as a business, and you have much more scrutiny over your marketing side, and hopefully you can employ people that are talented in this area and have a reasonable head on them as well to understand the regulatory environment they're in. So I think it is unfair to go back on some old social media postings of a company that it's not reflective of where they are now either. Anyway, that's the negative side. I think on the positive side, we do have a voice now that's we're being heard. It's recognised that we play an important part of the economy as well. So, I think where we need assistance further is everyone's talking about skill shortages at the moment. So we need to really work on training and getting more training across all the states. We've made some good headway with that. We've still got a long way to go, but we're getting there. I think the whole container deposit schemes, having a nationalised system there in terms of being able to register those and maintain that would be a benefit, and that's something we've been pushing for. I'm really kind of red hot on truth in labelling. I think there's still a lot of confusion out there in the marketplace around who owns what and what's independent and what's not. And the indie seal is going some way towards that. We've still got some more awareness to do around the indie seal and what that means. But I think it should be very transparent in terms of who owns what brewery. That should be really at the point of purchase.
Yeah, for sure. I think if everyone knew where their dollars were going, or where the margin from the beer that they purchased was going, I think a lot more people would be supporting your members and purchasing beer from your members. The education
on that point, we do know that's true. We know that from the roadmap we've been putting together. We've just asked members to go and give final feedback on that 10-year roadmap. But part of that, we did a big stakeholder engagement piece and spoke most importantly to the punters, and the punters want to support independent craft breweries. It's important to them. So if they know at the point of purchase, they'll make that goes into their purchasing decision.
I couldn't agree more. The education aspect that you were talking about before, obviously there's nationally recognised education, but obviously the states run a lot of that, and especially in the TAFE area, no doubt that covers off a lot of the training that is required to train people up in the beer vertical. Can you run me through the type of changes that you as an organisation, being the IBA, but also you as an independent brewer yourself? What are the type of changes that you would make to that formalized education, and how do you get it to a point where it's suitable, 100% suitable and fit for purpose for the industry?
It's two things. So I think we need more entrance to the industry, and that's through the Syndicate 3, I believe, and we've got that available in not all the states across the country and not all the regions. So it's available in Sydney and Ultimo and up in Brisbane. We don't. We're struggling in South Australia at the moment. We need a new teacher. The teacher that was been there for a while has left, so we need someone to pick up the mantle and start teaching there. Victoria don't offer Certificate 3 to the general public. It's only been direct to Asahi at this point. So pushing for that. There's a lot of work we're doing with WABA over in WA to get Certificate 3 up and running as soon as we can, and we really need to keep on pushing it further. Like, Tassie doesn't have anything, Canberra doesn't have anything yet either. On the other side too, there's a Certificate 4 qualification, which no one's written course material for yet, and we really want to get that up and running. And that's for further education on after Certificate 3, or if someone is new to the industry but is going to take a senior role. So we're looking at production managers, head brewers, or business owners to understand the technical aspects of brewing, but also talk about running a brewery and some of those other skills that are required. And I've made sure that there was some leadership training in there. There's some financial training. There's some production planning skills. Those types of skills that are not direct to specific to brewing necessarily, but all about running a brewing business. They're the skills that maybe are lacking in the industry. And as breweries are growing rapidly, people might find themselves in a position where they were quite comfortable with the skill set they had in terms of being able to knock out great beer. But if you all of a sudden you've got to run a team of 6, plan production, run a budget in terms of maintenance, and make sure that you're keeping a ledger in terms of all the raw materials and everything that goes into brewing. Yeah, they might be finding that you're not swimming quite as well as you used to be, and a bit of skilling up there would help.
And it completely changes the decision-making process of, do I actually want to go and do this as a business? Because I think everyone thinks that going into business is a lot easier than what it actually is in reality. I know that from, running multiple businesses over my lifetime, and that from running multiple businesses over yours, that all these hidden costs and the market going up and down and all the different challenges of trying to get paid as well, they all come into it. And I think that a lot of people don't understand those risks and challenges prior to actually opening a business.
Yeah, you definitely need an appetite for risk. There's different people you require on your journey too. I think as you get bigger, you probably need to employ some, particularly on the financial side, people that are more risk adverse. But when you start, if you don't have an appetite for risk, you'd look at it on paper and go, "This is crazy. I'm never going to do it." So,
especially when you've got with beer, you guys have a certain number of liters that you need to brew, and then anything up to that is losses. So you have to be prepared to be able to take some of those early losses and kind of back yourself that you can brew X amount of liters of beer to be able to produce enough revenue to actually cover your initial costs. And then even after that, it's still not all margin. You still got your base costs, which are ridiculously high in every game. And with the labor and wages of in Australia, it's it's hard in any business. So
yeah. Look, I've done a couple of short courses for business startup in this area, and after the first lecture, I had quite a few people come up and say, "Look, this is not for me," and it's kind of good that they realise that before they're taking out a loan or something like that. So it's not starting a new brewing business is not for everyone. Make sure you've got a very clear idea of what you want to achieve, what your goals are, and what you want out of it financially. Is what you're going to put in what you hope to get out?
Yeah, is it worth it? And then you've got, we see in this industry, a lot of people ask friends and family for funding and that type of thing, which happens quite a lot. And that's a challenge in itself. Just asking them and the relationship that can create with people that you know and love. So it's really good to understand the structure of your cost base and what you need to do to actually be profitable before you start, for sure. just quickly on the going back to the education side of things, the certificate 3, is that a certificate 3? Is it a process manufacturing course, or like what's the end qualification that they get?
It sits under food processing. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
So it's just been updated, and we're going to have to do some work to get the course updated. But finally, it will be certificate 3 in microbrewing. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, I think there should be real growth in that area. I'm very surprised that people don't do it. Obviously, it's pretty difficult just considering the size of the industry and the amount of students that you would probably have. But there's got to be a way to be able to blend it, to be able to do it both some online and then some on the job in certain breweries that can put up their hand and say, hey, we need some help, and then students can say, hey, I'm keen to help.
Well, that's what we've done with because I teach part-time at Ultimo, and that is that we have work placements, and
cool.
That's a really good opportunity for new people to get some hands-on practical experience and make sure it's something that they do want to do. But so many people have found jobs through that because both the brewery and the applicant get a good look at each other and make sure it's going to be a good cultural fit. Generally, it goes from there. So we've had a high degree of success getting people in the industry via that method.
Yeah, it's good to have an extended job interview,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And I don't think, to be honest, we're not asking for that much. We're asking for people to be enthusiastic, show up on time, and get stuck in. Really, yeah.
It's interesting. You say that that's not asking for much, but so I think sometimes now it's pretty difficult. I spoke to Tom from Mismatch last week. Tom, the head brewer at Mismatch, and he's in his late 20s, 29, but a really enthusiastic young guy. And the difference between dealing with someone that is in their 20s and super enthusiastic is someone that goes and gets a job as a head brewer somewhere, as opposed to someone who's kind of not that keen to learn and not up and about and not enthusiastic. The differences was stark.
Yeah, I completely get it. Yeah, and that's really, I know that's talking to other breweries out there. That's really what we want to see is willingness and eagerness to learn is first and foremost. It is a steep learning curve. You might think you know it all from what you've read or what you've made at home, but it's very different being in a brewery, a commercial brewing environment. Great attitude is going to take you a long way.
Yeah, the kind of the differences from it, but turning from a kind of an art that you might do as a home brewer and all that type of thing, going from an art to being truly about science and kind of getting in there and having to scale. A lot of that is, that'd be a massively steep learning curve. Learning how to scale that beautiful beer that you're brewing. How do you scale that for national or international consumption? Would be an enormous learning curve.
Yeah, and you're moving from tinkering to doing a different recipe every time you brew, to really honing in and perfecting and not changing what you're doing, but aiming for consistency. And look, the job is a lot of cleaning and maintaining.
Yep.
Wax on, wax off.
Yep, it's pure production. The industry. How have you seen the industry change in the last 10 years? I know it's a really broad question. There's a lot of areas there, but I'd love to understand the kind of attitudes of the people within the industry, and then probably the maybe the challenges or maybe the positives around actually being a commercial brewer, because it's a big shift.
Yeah, I think the industry has probably gone from that infant terrible to the difficult teenage years, and we're coming up to like growing up a little bit, I think, now. So certainly the level of professionalism is much higher. I think technically the beers are so much better, I think, as well. So the customer expectation is really high in terms of quality, and the industry is matching that with the same level of discipline and quality in terms of making the beer. And then I think we're just, we're attracting people to the industry that have got a high degree of skill in marketing and business administration as well. So I'd say from where we started, I remember, you go to Good Beer Week and you'd all go to each other's events, and there was probably a couple of highlights there that you would, you'd see everybody there, to where everyone's busy doing their own thing. So that's kind of like, I miss the old days in some ways from that perspective, but we've all had to grow up and run our own businesses essentially. So that's certainly the thing I've noticed. We've gone through a few different evolutions and trends in beer, and I think the range of beers, we're not really aping old styles anymore. There's new styles coming out. I think there's a breadth there, a breadth of different styles of beer, which is good to see.
Is there anything that you guys are doing that's kind of a little bit different to the traditional Young Henrys that you want to talk about?
Yeah, look, I guess we've expanded into gin and RTDs as well. So outside of the beer that we make, and we've had a lot of fun with the B-sides, and we're bringing out a new core range pretty soon, and we've got a whole bunch of different limited releases lined up, but we're getting a lot of traction with the gin at the moment as well. So that was that distilling project we started probably in 2016 or something like that, and it's really starting to get its legs now.
Yeah, that's obviously. I reckon it's a brilliant idea to be able to produce to be able to distill a spirit as well, because you've got an existing customer base both from a wholesale and probably a retail perspective. So you kind of it's quite a sharp idea to do. You've actually got distribution from day one.
Yeah, it's taken us a while. I think getting the product right is probably taken us longer than we thought too. But it's we've won 2 gold medals this year for the gin, one in San Francisco and one in London. So, we know the product's great, and we've got the feedback that it is great, which is fantastic. It is a different product to sell. Spirits is not the same conversation as beer. So you are talking to different category managers, and it's a different conversation at the actual bar and the pub as well. So we've learned that along the way. It's not the same thing. But it is good to be able to diversify at the same time.
And the actual production side of gin, probably vastly different to beer. What are obviously you've had to learn a lot. What have been the challenges of actual producing gin as opposed to producing beer?
Oh, look, it was a steep learning curve, but there's also some major advantages, like, in terms of shelf life, you're kind of sorted really. With a 40% ABV bottle of gin, you don't have to worry about that, that having a best before date that the clock is ticking on. Yes, so but then holding the inventory too, you've got to go, well, you're holding a lot of stock, a lot of value stock, as where you weren't. Then there's a whole bunch of other regulatory issues around it, because it's a dangerous good you're handling as well.
Wow.
So if you've got a large stock holding of gin, it presents much more of a risk than 5% beer.
And obviously, the tax treatment is completely different to what wine was and is, and obviously what beer is now. The distillers probably haven't got the same tax.
No, they did.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, which was great. Where I guess where I think the real pinch point is going to be, where distillers and brewers may be clashing, I can foresee in the near future, is around seltzers. Yep. So, if you've got 2 products on the shelf that ostensibly taste the same to the consumer, and one's taxed on a different regime than the other, there's an argument there to say it's not fair. I think what brewers who make seltzer would say is, though, that there's a lot more labour going into the manufacturing of the brewed seltzer as opposed to the dump and stir mix,
like a mixed one. Yeah.
There's some merit to that argument. It's not 100% black and white, I would say.
Yep.
So that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah, cool. And lastly, what's next for you guys at Young Henrys? You guys are, you've kind of had your 10th anniversary recently. anything exciting coming up, or any new?
Nothing I can really talk about, unfortunately.
That's all right.
There's a bunch of really exciting things happening that I've been personally involved with, and the company's been working on as well. But nothing I can reveal on this podcast.
Hopefully we can reveal it first at some point. Mate, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. That was a really good chat. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks again.
Cheers.